Welcome back, everyone, to World Gone Weird. Buckle up, buttercups, because today's news cycle is a doozy. I swear, if I didn't laugh, I'd cry. Probably into a vat of artisanal ice cream.
Well, let's try to keep the crying to a minimum, Sarah. There's a lot to unpack, and as always, I'm hoping we can find some threads of optimism, even if they're buried under layers of, well, you know.
Agreed. Optimism is important, but we also need a healthy dose of skepticism and, a rigorous application of the scientific method to all of this. No blind faith, just data.
Data, schmata. Let's just get to the point. Is the world going to hell in a handbasket or not? And more importantly, is it my handbasket?
Okay, Jimmy, deep breaths. Maybe start with the article about China basically telling Trump, hold my beer. We're still rising? Because that's quite something.
Right, that CNN piece. It's fascinating how they're framing this sort of almost defiant confidence. It feels like a calculated response to Trump's increased tariffs.
Calculated, yes, but is it sustainable? I mean, these pronouncements of boosting consumer demand and becoming a technological superpower. Where's the empirical evidence? What quantifiable metrics are they using to measure success? I need data, people.
Oh, please. China's always got some 5-year plan or another. It sounds great on paper, but does it actually trickle down to the average citizen? Or is it just more money for the CCP and fancy robots no one can afford?
Well, the article does mention that many in China are still feeling uncertain, more inclined to save than spend. That suggests there's a disconnect between the official narrative and the reality on the ground.
Exactly. And the high unemployment rate among young people, that's a significant destabilizing factor. You can't build a technological superpower on the backs of disillusioned youth. The statistics suggest a significant risk.
Right, but let's not forget the entertainment factor. I mean, Ne Zha 2 inches smashing box office records. China's basically saying, we can make our own Disney. It's kind of amazing, in a terrifying world domination sort of way.
There's also the BYD electric vehicle success story. That's a concrete example of China competing directly with established Western brands and arguably winning. That's a tangible advancement and something to be optimistic about for a sustainable future, potentially.
The EV industry is also heavily subsidized by the government. It's not exactly a free market success story. There are concerns about rare earth mineral sourcing, environmental impact of battery production, and, intellectual property theft. We can't ignore those variables.
See, that's what I'm talking about. They steal our technology, undercut our prices, and then act like they're the good guys. And now they're all buddy-buddy with Russia? I don't trust them as far as I can throw them.
Yeah, but is anyone actually buying that? I mean, aggressive behavior in the South China Sea, human rights concerns. They can't just slap a responsible leader sticker on it and expect the world to swoon.
The problem is, some countries are buying it, especially those who feel like the US is no longer a reliable partner. We can't ignore the shift in global power dynamics. It's not about whether we like it, it's about analyzing the factors objectively.
Okay, so China's playing the long game. But what about Trump? Is he really going to let them get away with it? He's threatening 60% tariffs? That's insane.
The article highlights the continuity of leadership under Xi Jinping. That's a significant advantage. The US presidency turns over every 4 or 8 years, creating instability and policy shifts. China has a more consistent long-term strategy. That's what the longitudinal data is showing.
So it's like a chess match, but with the global economy as the board. And the pieces are made of tariffs and semiconductors. Sounds thrilling and potentially disastrous.
Chess match, my foot. It's more like a demolition derby. Everyone's just smashing into each other, hoping to come out on top. And the average guy is going to get crushed in the middle.
The data suggests that a protracted trade war will hurt both economies. The question is, who can absorb the pain for longer? And what are the long-term consequences for global supply chains, inflation, and, geopolitical stability?
Speaking of pain, did you see that piece about the migrant deported in chains? That's not a good look, especially when you're trying to project an image of global leadership. Makes you wonder what kind of society is Trump trying to establish.
Look, I'm not saying I like seeing people in chains, but if it deters illegal immigration, maybe it's a necessary evil. You can't just let everyone waltz across the border.
That BBC article is heart-wrenching. The guy sold everything he had, risked his life, and then gets deported in shackles. It highlights the desperation that drives people to take such extreme measures. And it raises serious ethical questions about how we treat migrants.
The use of restraints during deportation, especially on women, raises significant human rights concerns. Is there a scientifically valid justification for this practice? What is the cost-benefit analysis? Is it truly necessary for security, or is it simply a form of, punishment?
Punishment, intimidation, it's a message loud and clear. And that bombastic soundtrack they used in the video, straight out of a dystopian movie. It's more Hollywood than humane.
The article mentions the Indian government raising concerns with the US. That's a positive step. But it also underscores the importance of international pressure in holding countries accountable for their human rights practices.
Maybe Modi's just trying to score political points. Look at me, standing up to Trump. It's all a show.
Perhaps. But even if it's politically motivated, it's still a step in the right direction. We need to encourage governments to prioritize human rights, regardless of their, ulterior motives. It's a very subtle game of 3D chess.
Chilling effect, absolutely. And for the agents, the people smugglers, going into hiding, it's a grim picture. It is so clear they are being used in exchange for money.
Well, maybe that's a good thing. Less illegal immigration, less strain on our resources. Isn't that what everyone wants?
But at what cost? To individuals fleeing poverty and violence, to our own moral standing in the world. It's a complex equation, and it's not as simple as just shutting the door.
And what about the long-term economic consequences? Undocumented workers often fill essential jobs that citizens are unwilling to do. Reducing the labor pool could lead to, increased costs for consumers and businesses. We need to look at the aggregate data.
Okay, so we've got a rising China, a bellicose Trump, and migrants in chains. Anyone need a stiff drink? Because I'm seriously considering it.
Hold that thought, Sarah. Let's talk about the job cuts in Trump's heartland. That RNZ article is a tough read, especially when you see how it's affecting communities that overwhelmingly supported him.
Well, maybe they should have thought twice before voting for a guy who promised to slash government spending. Elections have consequences, right?
It's a classic case of unintended consequences. People voted for a smaller government, but they didn't realize it would mean losing their own jobs. Now it is time to enforce those policies. It highlights the disconnect between campaign rhetoric and the reality of policy implementation.
That woman, Jennifer Piggott, renouncing her allegiance to Trump after getting fired. That's a powerful anecdote. It shows the emotional toll of these policies, the human cost behind the statistics.
Yeah, and the line about nobody that I've talked to understood the devastation that having this administration in office would do to our lives. Ouch. Talk about buyer's remorse.
But Trump's trying to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Isn't that a good thing? These government jobs are often overpaid and underworked, right?
That's a generalization. And where's the data to support that claim? Are these cuts actually eliminating waste? Or are they just, gutting essential services and hurting communities that rely on those jobs? I want quantifiable evidence that they are not hurting the individuals affected.
It is pretty grim because the town is already struggling, so the extra layoffs can seriously set them back economically.
That is a significant point. It is a concentrated impact. I wonder, what are the mitigation procedures?
Maybe. But it is for the long-term goal.
And the SNL skit, a shining light for the world.
Maybe it's a light for the world.
Well, it is SNL.
Guys, that's all for today. Let's work on the facts and move ahead.